In 2026, what if your website could attract your dream clients? In today's episode, Courtney, who is the owner of Courtney Lynette Creative Co., is walking us through a simple website audit and a few tweaks that we can make to not only attract customers, but to attract our ideal buyer. And it's not as tricky as you might think. With a few tips and a couple of hours, you can have your website fully updated to attract those dream clients before we even kick off the new year. Let's jump in. Welcome back, Courtney. Once again, we're
Thank
talking
you.
about our dream clients and we're going to jump right in. How can we start attracting our dream clients in 2026?
Yeah, I think it's important to look back on who you booked in 2025 to really think about who you want to be booking in 2026. Because sometimes we get in this stuck in this pattern of I just want to book more and I don't necessarily want to book better. And I think that's where this is such a good time to sit down and think about okay, what were the jobs I really liked doing this year? What are the jobs that drove me insane or I wanted to pull my hair
Yes.
out doing? And so sitting down and figuring that out is always the first step. I always do this with my clients when we're working on sites anyway, to talk about we want to be attracting who you want to be working with, not just who you have been working with. So doing that, thinking about booking better, not more, is always the first step. And looking at what your brand looks like now, and how you can evolve to match who you want to be, booking. So
Yeah. Do you
I
have
think
any
that's always
strategies of how do you do that? Is that pen and paper? Is it looking back at a calendar?
I think it's different for everyone. Sometimes people are visual and you can look back maybe through your photos and see to jog your memory on what events worked, what didn't work. I'm a pen and paper kind of person. I would probably put that down of okay, this is a great year. What was good about it? What was bad about it? Or what were my sticking points or, those types of things. This is
Yeah.
obviously a bigger conversation with your business in general of what you want to be doing. But then obviously we're talking today about how you can change that attraction wise or branding wise. Um, but yeah, I would write down just this worked, this didn't. How can I change that? And who do I want to be working with this year? Who were some of my favorite clients and why were they my favorite clients?
Yeah.
Was it just the personal feeling of who we are working with? I was just thinking, or I was watching a client the other day talk about someone who was they got that red flag feeling,
Mm,
immediately when you're talking to somebody in an inquiry process. It's think through those red flags. What were they? What did you say yes to that you probably should have said no to? And then kind of structuring that out. And then from there, you can look at okay, now I know who my target audience is because I think that's good. I think that changes. Your business evolves, your skills evolve, your life evolves. Maybe
mhm.
you had another kid, maybe you have more freedom, those types of things, and you want to take on different types of jobs.
Yeah.
So that's the base, and then we can look at how to change your brand to
Yeah.
attract those people better.
Yeah, because there is a big difference. I'm reading a book right now, and it's kind of just it's made me kind of realize all the different ways of setting up a balloon business.
Hmm.
Because at first it's like, whatever, we're all the same. We start a balloon
Yeah.
business, we're doing decor. But there's on-site installations, there's people who do deliveries only, there's people who do
Mhm.
pickups from their house only, there's people who, have partnerships with venues, there's people who have really only ever do in-home parties, and those all look very different, and I think those
Yeah.
are very different clients, and like you're suggesting, you can attract them in
Yeah.
different ways.
Yeah, and I think, like we said, at the end of the year, the beginning of the year, it's always a good time to say, "What do I want to be doing?" And you don't have to do all of it,
Yeah,
And I think a lot of times when you're in the first couple of years of your business, you feel like, "I have to hit everything," "I have to do a pickups, I have to do on-site, I have to do this, that, and the other." And I have a lot of balloon clients now whose sites are all different because everybody does do different things, and you don't have to feel like you're attracting everyone because then you're gonna attract no one,
yeah,
which stinks, at the end of the day. And I think people get so caught up in wanting to, just have everything on their site and offer everything. And sometimes that messaging gets really confusing and you end
Yeah,
up losing clients versus what you thought you were doing, which was attracting everyone. When
right.
it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, okay, so cool. So let's, jump into I was gonna say some of the visuals, but maybe there's more to it than that. What are the things on your site that we can start tweaking to start attracting that ideal client?
Yeah, I have a list because I was, like, really thinking about this because there are some really easy things that you could just jump in and do by yourself and, without a whole new website or brand or something, but these are some good ones. So, if you want to look at your visuals first, okay? So, your images, going through your images, even if it's just your home page to start with, if you get really overwhelmed with, like, site building or stuff like that, going through and taking down images that just don't make sense for you anymore. Like,
Mm,
if it's an install that you just, like, never wanna do again, but it was really cool and it was really big, but you're like, "That was terrible." Don't put that on your site, even if it looks impressive. You want to go through, again, having that target audience new target audience in your brain and go through and make sure all your visuals match who that target audience is. So kind of doing an audit of all of your images, what maybe is old work that you're like, "Oh, that's not that great anymore," or like, "I
yeah,
can do so
right.
much better." So going through all of your images of maybe from the past year, adding new ones, making sure everything's edited, um, similarly, so we're not doing, like, crazy edits with, like, some are really bright, some are really dark, that kind of helps create um, that visual calmness on your
Okay.
site because it's not like your brain's hopping all over the place. Um, so imagery, that's always the first one, or maybe doing a brand shoot. So redoing those images,
Yeah.
going through and hiring a photographer, relooking at, what you want to offer and doing some kind of shoot, that type of thing. Um, Fonts, that's another one that's a really easy fix. A lot of times what people are attracting with their fonts may not be what they actually want to be attracting. So,
Hmm.
especially with balloons, I think people get stuck in this. It needs to be fun and cutesy and playful, which is totally fine. And sometimes that does fit if you're wanting to do a lot of kids' parties or if you're wanting to, um, just do them more like at home type crowd.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients, especially in the past year, especially when they're booking me, are saying, I want to start attracting more corporate clients
Mm,
because, that's the big buck item, which I totally understand. But sometimes those fonts, the playful style and stuff, it's too much. It's too kiddish and they don't feel like you may be a fit for their more corporate event.
yeah.
Balloons are playful. Like you don't have to go totally away from that.
Right, right.
Um, but finding that happy medium of, like, sophisticated, a little bit more luxury, if that's what you're going for. I always have people pick well, when we're doing a branding session, we pick 3 main fonts, and so a big mistake I see on people's even on social media or marketing material, stuff like that, is you're just all over the place with fonts.
Mm,
So this is just a good audit process of, like, okay, I should have 1 header font, which is, like, your main font on your site, um, a subheader font, which would be kind of those like little titles above your headers, those types of things, or buttons, those types, and a paragraph font. Really, those are your like 3 main fonts. So if you go on your site and you're like, "Oh, we've gotten a little bit out of control on
yeah.
here," that's how the user is going to feel too.
Yeah, and
Or
I
it
think that
might,
that does happen kinda slowly over time.
yeah,
I think when you first build your website, you're like, "Yeah, it's all dialed in," but then you, like,
mhm,
add a random page, and then you update your bio, and then you add more information about pickup 'cause people are doing it wrong or whatever, and all of a
yeah,
sudden, you're like it's just kind of creeping in, so I like that idea of just going in and, like, all I'm focusing on today is getting the fonts the
yeah.
same.
And brand fonts are so important versus trendy fonts.
Mm,
So everyone gets really excited about like a new trendy font that's coming out or a style or you want to match, or you want to, be in the flow. But if you're taking that away from your brand, it's going to confuse the client of what you're offering, what your style is, those types of things. So sticking to brand fonts, that is super important. If you want to do a fun font, I always say use it as an accent font. So, you know, maybe it's a script font here and there where it's like your name or a
yeah,
little quote, something like that. But script fonts, anything crazy like a crazy retro font, something like that, are a little bit harder to read. So you don't want that to be kind of like your main um, font on the site.
yeah.
So images, fonts, type audit. That's always a good step. Same with color palette. If your colors are all over the place, especially like we said with balloons and you're wanting to be playful and colorful. I'm all about color. If you look at my site, it's color, color, color. I love clients who like color. But if it's too much everywhere, again, a site is you're trying to create calmness, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to create confidence in your business and somebody who's booking you. So if it's all over the place and it feels like I'm in a, you know, carnival fun house, it might be too much,
Yeah.
especially when your work has a lot of color already in it.
Right,
So
right. Some of my favorite websites are, like, very light, very, like, white or neutral, and then the
yeah.
photos are the accent.
Yeah, you kind of have to think about what your work is. So, like,
Yeah.
sometimes if I'm working with a photographer, videographer, somebody like that, some their photos are more neutral. You know, we can play around with some colors in different ways. But with
Mhm.
balloons, your colors, and I always tell people if you're doing a brand shoot, that's where you bring your colors in and do that. But on your site, we don't need to have like color blocks everywhere. Like maybe
Yeah.
there's a footer that's the color block or your buttons or colors, but it doesn't need to be like so flashy everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of toning that down, understanding again who's your client. Maybe you need to tone your colors down. Maybe if your new target audience for 2026 is more corporate, still have the pop of color, but maybe not so many colors on your
Mhm.
site. Maybe bring in a few neutrals so it's not so overwhelming to the person trying to book you, those types of things. So yeah, images, fonts, colors. Mobile layout is another good
Oh,
one to
I
look
was gonna
at.
say this, I was gonna let you get to it, but this was gonna be
Yeah.
my little tip, is mobile layout. I will see, like, the biggest, best balloon companies out there, and then you go to their mobile site, and there's, like, weird gaps when you scroll or, like, things
Yeah.
are overlapping because they just, like, they didn't
Hmm.
think to update how it looks on a cell phone, which the majority of my users actually
Totally.
are on mobile.
Yeah, over 70% of people are using and booking on a mobile device. And sometimes if it's a booger a bigger job, they're gonna move from mobile over to desktop. I don't know why our brains do that, but sometimes I'm
Yeah,
like, I need to pull out my computer for this, you
yeah,
know. But yeah, you spend all this time, money, and effort and stuff putting your desktop site together, and then if your mobile doesn't function or work properly, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
mhm,
So again, this is like a whole audit process, I would say in general. It's like going through all those visual things, but then, yeah, the mobile site, making sure it's functioning, making sure all of your buttons are working. If a client or potential client comes to your site, desktop or mobile, and a button's not working, that's a frustrating point,
yeah,
and they may leave.
yeah.
You may lose out on that customer just because um, the usability of your
And
site is just
and
not
sometimes that actually
functioning.
did happen to me. I tweaked something on my mobile site or on my website, and then my lead capture form is embedded from 17
Yeah.
Hats, and the embed actually, like, it shifted, so, like, you actually
Mhm.
couldn't scroll all the way down to the submit button, and I don't know how long
Yeah.
it was like that. It took a customer to tell me, like, I couldn't submit this online or on my phone, so I switched to desktop, and I looked, and sure enough, like, it was impossible to book me, and, like, unless you're checking that, you wouldn't know.
Exactly. That's actually a big one that we run into as clients because anything you're embedding, if usually like a 17 hats, you're going to be updating it on the 17 hats site,
Mhm.
which is nice because then it automatically updates on your website. So that's good. But you may need to give yourself more space on your wherever
Yes,
you're
'cause
embedding it so that your submit button is
that's
showing
exactly what happened
again.
to me. I think on my form, say that on the website it fit into the, like, this much space. I added, like, one more question, and so it
Yeah.
made the form longer
Mhm.
inside 17 Hats, but on my website, the rest of that form got, like, chopped off,
Yep.
and for whatever reason, you couldn't submit it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a contact page is, like, one, like, you should be putting on your calendar once a month to be checking
Mm,
on, making sure, like, everything's still functioning, send yourself a test, like, how much would you hate yourself if you're like, "Oh my gosh, this hasn't been working, and how long has it not been
yeah.
working for?" So, like, that's the bread and butter of your business is inquiry, so a contact form is always a good one to be checking on, making sure buttons, especially anytime you update, a CRM tool or, like, 17 Hats or anything like that, so
Yeah.
functionality of the site, mobile functionality of the site, that one's huge, especially if you're looking to book the higher end client who's gonna be spending a lot of money with you. I've found that they're the ones who are gonna jump off quicker if
Yeah.
they hit any type of roadblock on the site, so
A lot of
that's
times
always a good
too,
one.
they're not, like, I don't wanna say they don't care as much, but, like, this is a task on their to-do list. Like,
Mhm.
they have to book the balloons, and
Yeah,
sometimes, I used to work in a more corporate setting. I would leave that to, like, the last minute, you know? It was
totally.
like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is, like, the one thing that seems overwhelming. I haven't done it yet. I need to do it."
Mhm.
And if I'm experiencing any of those little roadblocks on, like, the last day, I'm just gonna find whoever can commit and book me
Yep.
at the last minute.
Yep. And speaking of contact forms, that's also a good spot to kind of look at when you're thinking of your 2026 client versus 2025. A lot of times people will have a contact form that's just very basic.
Mm,
So, name, email, phone number, stuff like that. But if you can, again, I'm going to say audit a million times in this podcast interview, apparently, but audit that contact form and think of that ideal customer, what questions you would be needing from them, creating a more like professional, organized experience helps the client feel more excited
mm,
to book you. So having more questions, they want to feel like you're covering all the bases, right,
yeah,
from the get-go. So if you can, I mean, it's helpful for you too. You don't have to do a lot of back and forth. If you can ask questions like, is your event indoor and outdoors? What's your budget? Um, what's the venue location, stuff like that, kind of building it out a little bit more so that experience is a little bit cleaner. That's helpful when you're thinking about who you want to book, or like if you're moving from kids parties to corporate, maybe you need to add some more questions on there for a corporate style
right.
client. And you can have both. Some people will have two different forms, so
Mm,
maybe it's a form for a personal event versus a corporate event. Like I working with a videographer today who has a planner or a contact form for planners and couples,
oh,
because that's two different inquiry forms. So
yeah,
thinking through that, making your experience easier, but also making their experience easier, it just again it creates that trust and helps them feel like you know what you're
yeah.
doing.
And I would say too, it's okay to get rid of questions too. Like I had
Yeah.
one on there that it was like, "What time does your event end?" And I took it off because I was just like, "I don't really care when their event ends.
Yeah.
We'll go get it." Like if it's a corporate job, like I don't want them not knowing what time their picnic ends to be the reason that
Yeah.
they don't submit the form. So I just kind of got rid of that. I was like, "I don't care. I'll come pick these up at midnight if you book a $3,000 party."
Right, yes. It's that sweet spot of, like,
Mhm.
we don't wanna have them feeling like they have to fill out this novel of information, but you want to feel like we know what we're talking about. So these
Yeah.
are the things we need to know from you, and it helps us to get you answers quicker. It helps, especially like what you were saying with a corporate client who's a lot of times booking last minute. If you have all that information in place, then you're doing a lot less back and forth. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's
Cool.
always just a good one to look at.
Well, how do we actually do this? There are kind of 3 options. People who have nothing at all, people who
Yeah.
do their own website, and people who work with some sort of website manager or designer. So let's just go category by category about how you can tackle this end of the year audit slash dream client attraction episode you've kind of laid out for us.
Yeah, I mean, if you have nothing, maybe now's the time to start thinking about getting something.
Yes.
Um, you've heard me talk about this before. Social media isn't enough anymore, especially like algorithms and stuff. People are having a hard time finding you. You may not be seeing stuff. So, really looking at those processes when thinking about, I still think you should do the process of looking at your dream client and talking about that. If that might push you towards needing a site. Because if you're thinking, okay, my dream client are these corporate clients and I don't have a website, where are they going to find you? A lot
Mhm.
of corporate clients aren't on social media, or they're not looking through social media. They're
Or, like,
doing
they don't
Google
wanna
searches.
contact you through their personal account, but they're not
Right.
gonna do it through, like, the official corporate account.
Exactly. So that's a roadblock. You got to
Mhm.
look at what roadblocks you have. So if you have nothing, really understanding what your budget is for the next year, how you can implement something. If you're not ready for like this big full site, maybe you do it yourself and maybe you do a one-page site and you just get it up there and you have something available for somebody to be able to find you and reach you. That could be your first step for 2026. And that's great. That's a step.
Perfect.
And if you're in the boat where you're like, I'm pretty tech savvy, I like my site, DIY, jump in, do those audits, go through your colors and your fonts and your images and all of that. Maybe pick one thing to tackle per month for the first quarter.
I love
And
that.
so it's not so overwhelming. And maybe you do book a branding session for images, a photo session. And that's your big goal for 2026 is I'm going to update my photos. I'm going to keep my site. All of this has to do with budget, right? Everyone has different budgets. So
And
a
sometimes
lot of
just
times,
looking at your site like, I did this the other day, I went to send someone, like, I call them celebration towers, and I went to send them the direct page so they could see what they were, and I was like, "Wait, ew, these are the ones that I have on here?" I've done so many better ones since then, and all it was just adding better photos. I didn't have to do anything except upload new stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, just taking the time, like carve out a day on your account, you know, even if it's a couple hours of one specific day to really go through your site and
Mhm.
make notes on each page. And it doesn't mean you have to then go in and change everything in that day. But maybe that's your audit day that you're looking at your target audience. ChatGPT is awesome for this, you know, have it start asking you questions about your target audience, who they are, what you liked, you know, like you can get really nitty gritty with this, but
Yeah.
it's always it's a good spot to start. And then with that in mind, going through each page and just making notes on each page of what I would change, what do I need to do, what's my budget this year for site and marketing, branding, that type of stuff. And then after you do that, if you can do it yourself, great. And like I said, tackle it over the first quarter or whatever and get it done. Give yourself an end date, which is always really important because or else it's gonna drag on.
Yeah.
It's why I do a lot of my systems in what I call block formatting. We'll do time blocks on the calendar versus this, like, open-ended, "Yeah, we're gonna update your site." That's can take forever.
Yeah.
So if you give that to yourself of, like, put days on the calendar or I'm gonna update this page by the end of the month or
I
whatever.
love that. I think if I would totally do that. I would put it on
Yeah.
my calendar, like, update website as the
Yeah.
task for the day, and it's like, "Oh my god, I don't wanna do that,"
Yeah.
versus, like, go through page by page and make notes of photos that need updating. Like, that is
Yeah.
much more manageable, and I'm willing to do that, but, like, oh, update website, that's like, good
Yeah.
god, that's a huge task.
Well, and yeah, maybe you do one day that's like update fonts on website,
Mhm.
and that's all you do, and you just look at your fonts. If you have an hour to do that, great, you have an hour to do it and put it on your calendar. And so breaking it up into smaller chunks is always much more manageable than like the monster of a website that is
Mhm.
living in most people's brains. And then if you get through that process or you just know yourself and you know, like, I'm not techie, I don't want to break anything, I don't even know where I'm going, that's when it's maybe time to hire some professional help. So if you're looking at your branding and you're thinking, this just doesn't fit me anymore, you know, and maybe that's the point where you start to hire someone like me who's helping you understand who that target audience is for 2026, or you're just really overwhelmed with that part of the process, we can help that. We always do that with our clients. It's the first step. Um, Looking at your branding and thinking, this is super trendy and it was really nice for 2024 or 20,
Yeah.
25, but I want to move out of that. That's always a good time to hire someone. Or if you love your branding, we have clients that come to us too who are like, I really like my branding, but my site is just not working for me, or it's
Mm.
not speaking to my new audience that I want to do, or I want to book more corporate versus more parties. That's a really good time to jump on a call with somebody and like me who's going to walk you through of like, okay, how can we simplify? How can we talk to your ideal clients? What does that look like with your branding? Can we tweak your branding slightly? A lot of people are afraid to let go of old branding,
Yeah.
but you may just be able to tweak it a little bit if you still love it. Um, so doing things like that. So like you said, there's those buckets. So if you're like, I have nothing, now's the time to go. I can do it myself, break it down into those little bite-sized chunks, and then I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or I just don't wanna do it, or I'm so busy and I don't have time to do it. Those are the people that we work with a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the what if you're in the, like, "I don't know how to do this" camp, hire it. Hire it out. That's my advice. Like, you don't have the time to learn a
Mhm.
full other job or skill. Like, you're wasting time in other areas where you could be making enough money to just pay for someone else to do it. The
Yeah.
only reason I do my own is because I have from the very beginning, but, like, when I
Yeah.
think of the hours and months I've spent, over the
Yeah.
last decade doing my own website, if I was starting fresh now, I would absolutely hire someone else to do it. Um, and I like the way you do it because then people can then go in and tweak. Because I like having control. So just plug your business real quick because you're not like, okay, you're committing to working with me and then I'm going to hold your website hostage for the rest of your life, right? Like people can
No.
then go in and make tweaks on their own.
Yeah. So the way we work, our main package is called the website in a day. So that in itself is freeing if you really think about it. Obviously, there's prep work that goes into it, and I've talked about it before on this podcast. But the we were just talking about putting it on your calendar for a day or an hour or two, and that's just for like updating fonts. We can do a whole site in a day. So
Yeah.
That's really nice if you're, like, dragging your feet on it or you're like, "I don't have time," or "I don't have" I don't wanna wait a year for a new site. That's kind of where what we feel and what
Mhm.
we've heard from clients, which is why we created this system, and it works really well, and then you're done, and you don't have to think about it. But then once it's done, yes, we pass it over to our clients. You have full access to the back end. You obviously still have access to us too if you get stuck on anything, but, we like doing that because we want you to be updating your site.
Right, like, I
Like
don't wanna have to email someone if I wanna, like, update my bio. I just wanna, like, type it in there
right.
and have it be done.
Yeah, and, the updates, obviously, we've created this site that makes sense and is structurally sound and all of that stuff. So it's not we're not hoping somebody goes in and just changes everything that we
Mhm.
just worked on, but it's things like images that need to be swapped or yeah, a bio or
Pricing.
portfolios or pricing. Yeah, that's another thing to really look at for 2026. Prices have gone up for everything and
Mhm.
everyone's expecting that and it stinks and it's hard sometimes to raise your prices, but that's a good part of that audit process. But yeah, updating all those things, you should be updating your portfolio often, like twice a year, maybe, like once a year at least, so that especially with balloon artists, like you get better and better and better, and you get better jobs and you get different jobs, and you want to be showcasing those types of things. So filtering those out, taking off old ones, putting on new ones, those types of things. Reviews or testimonials, updating those as you get them. Um, Contact forms, those types of things. So, yes, we pass it over. We give a training on how to use I design everything on Show It. So, we do a basic training of how to swap images, how to swap text, all that type of stuff so that you're not stuck. And sometimes you're like, "I'm working at midnight and I need to swap this image and I can't get a hold of you at
Yeah.
midnight," you know? So, I want a client to have the control, but I also am happy to help if you're a type of client who is like, "I appreciate having that control, but I don't want to touch it."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we can help with that,
Well,
yeah.
great, great. Lots of great options. No excuse not to have a website in 2026. I would say it's a must. Let's wrap up. We are finishing up 2025, heading into 2026. What is a final piece of business advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, at the end of the year, it's always important to remember taxes are coming up. That's never a fun topic to talk about, but it's important to remember that a website is a tax write-off. So I'm always encouraging my clients at the end of the year, if you are doing this planning or you're thinking about doing a site for next year, you can, if as long as you're booking the service and you're paying, within 2025, you can use that as a tax write-off. So it's
That's a
sometimes the
really
little
good tip.
nudge,
That's I mean,
sometimes the
I
nudge
think we're
people
all
need.
in that situation sometimes where it's like you hear this information like you have to spend money and you're like, I don't just want to like buy stuff I don't
Yep.
need. But if you can purchase a website that is going to serve you forever and ever, what a
Yeah.
great way to bring down your taxable income or your profit at the end of the year. I love that.
Exactly, yeah. It's just a good excuse to get it done, get it
Yeah,
booked, and
right?
then it's
Put
on the calendar. You don't have to do it in 2025, like I said. You can book the service. It's part of a marketing, tax write-off, and then, we can work together in 2026, but
very cool.
it's always nice to remember.
Very cool. Well, if someone is interested in contacting you, where should they head?
Yeah, go to my website, obviously, courtneylynette.com. Everything is on there. I just redid my own site, which is very
I saw
exciting
your
because that
branding photos. They
took
look amazing.
forever. I really understand, being your own client. It's very hard. But everything is on there. I've really broken down all the services a lot better. Again, I looked at past of what was working for clients, what was not working for clients, and now the new site has a lot of stuff on there. So you can always go through there. And then the first step is always a discovery call so we can chat about your business, specifically what you need, what you want, who your audience is, all of that stuff.
Perfect.
And as always, Bright Bloom podcast listeners get $100 off if they book. So you just have to mention the podcast.
I love it. And we will link it in the show notes too. So you just have to click and head on over. Thank you so much. It was wonderful
Yes.
as always.
Thanks for having me.